Welcome, everybody, to episode number 50. 50 of Endless Conversation Loop. It's a celebration. My name is Brandon. I am here with my very amused co-host who's named...
This is Boom, and I wasn't prepared for the song and dance number.
Well, what better way is there to ring in a celebration than to have like a mini party about it?
I mean, it's kind of technically 2 anniversaries for this show, because it's, episode 50 of this, and then it's technically, episode 20 with the 2 of us now?
So, I remember talking about this in an earlier episode, but numbers are weird, because you have to remember... When I started on episode 1. So you started on episode 30. So there's no episode 0. So if you're actually doing things numerically, 49 would be your 20th episode because it'd be 30, 31, 32, 33, so on. So you have the equivalent number of episodes to age to drink. So I think that's still worth a celebration.
Well, given the state that we record in, I think that's an appropriate comparison.
Yader hey. That's right. So it's good enough.
Oh, works for me.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, you've crossed over 20, regardless. So there's plenty to celebrate today.
But anyway, what is the plan for this episode?
Yeah, today, no intro topics for a change. What a wonder. So to celebrate our achievement here... largely, I guess I shouldn't say largely, but 29 more of my achievements to here, getting alone to getting to episode 50, and in your case, getting through this first set of 20. Your first year, because I believe our first episode just barely came out in 2024. It would have been late December last year. So
yeah, that sounds about right, actually.
So even then, if that's another thing to celebrate, is a year for you as well. Yeah, December.
Yeah, according to Spotify, our first episode together for episode 30 was December 23rd. So we are almost exactly a year from the start of this.
Pretty close. So to celebrate this milestone, we thought we would do some reflection, some interviewing of one another. In my case, I really wanted to tailor this around not necessarily the show itself, but our independent creativity to getting here. But obviously, a big piece of the puzzle in getting us here is related to the games we play. So I have a lot of questions related to that. But it doesn't sound like we necessarily went in the same direction on these questions, which, if anything, I think is going to be helpful because it should really help us get some more impromptu answers from each other, some real answers from the heart. So what kind of direction did you go in?
So mine was kind of just a generic set of questions that I wanted to ask you because for as long as we've known each other, there is still a lot of stuff that I don't think that we know about each other because we've only known each other for about pushing 2.5 years now -ish?
That sounds about accurate. Yes, 2 to 2.5 years.
So my thought was to kind of get a better idea of the guy who I'm also co-hosting with this, is kind of get a little bit more background info and maybe kind of compare some notes together in terms of aspirations of the show as a whole. How did we kind of start into gaming? How did we kind of start getting into this? And then more particularly questions with you, because there's about 30 episodes that I do not exist, give or take, where I think it's kind of a fair assumption to be what? Why don't we ask Brandon, what was the thought process kind of going into this? So that's kind of where my direction is. So we probably won't get through all of them, considering that before we started recording, we have 18 questions compared total. So who knows how many of these we're actually going to get through. And I mean, we could always do another episode of this down the line. We can mark off whatever ones weren't used and we can always save them for a different time. But for the time being, let's see where we get it with all this, because I've been looking forward to this. I'm sure you've been looking forward to this, and all two of our listeners have definitely been indifferent.
Well, it could go either way. It depends on if they've gotten that far into episode 49, I think, and having heard about this subject that we're doing today. Although I suppose we talked about it a little bit in the late 40s, all of them, kind of that we're thinking about, like, we're doing something like this.
Yeah.
So, do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first with a question?
Well, I think I should go first with one particular question. So, first question that I want to ask is, what made you decide to start this podcast before I came on in general? Like, what made you decide this is what I'm going to do in my spare time? Like, what was the driving force behind it?
All right. Picture it. Sicily, 1938.
I hate that that's my favorite Golden Girls joke.
It's a pretty universally good joke. So,
It is.
let me take you back to... Well, I could go really far into the past if I really wanted to, but I think it primarily can kind of work starting in high school here. I've always had a sort of background interest in media stuff, and I think that's especially true of anybody in my age bracket, because even going back to being really little, the idea of like, wow, there's this box where you can be seen by somebody else across the world is really enticing. You know, you look at how many stories are there about like people going out to Hollywood, right? And they try to make it, and how many people don't, and they end up in poverty and working a dead-end job instead while they're trying to pursue their acting career. I knew I didn't want to do something like that, because that obviously, the thought of like really and truly making it is unrealistic. But I've always had this fascination with, you know, making that kind of stuff, because I've loved drama. So in high school, I joined the forensics team, which has nothing to do, for the record, with like dusting bones and, you know, taking fingerprints and stuff like that. So this is like competitive public speaking.
Coincidentally, I do also have a slight background in forensics back in middle school.
See, I didn't do it in middle school, because I know middle school was a little bit weird with it. Like, it was a thing, but it wasn't really a thing. Like, it was very limited in what you could do. High school was like the bigger sort of competition with it. And in, like, when I first joined, we're trying to figure out, okay, what category do you want to do? In Wisconsin, there's like 2 different forensics sort of leagues that schools can choose to be a part of. And the one that I was in had this category called radio speaking. So in that, you have, like, you end up in the library in the school, you and like a few dozen other kids, and you're given a packet with like a bunch of stories, and you have 30 minutes to pick out what you want, make notes on them, put them in the order you like, and you have to put together a 5-minute radio broadcast, in air quotes, with it. So there was one of the first examples, like, it wasn't into a microphone or anything like that, but it's getting the exercise of doing a sort of media type thing. I also did a lot of different projects in high school, and kind of similarly talking about those media influences that you have as a kid. Another way, as I would like start growing up, what grows up with me, the birth of online media, right? A lot of the stuff that my questions to you are sort of tailored around. And to the point where I talked about, it's like, oh, it's unrealistic to think you're going to make it and make 7 to 8 figures a year in Hollywood. I think it's largely unrealistic for a lot of people to make a living just on making online media. That's why with this show, I've been like, if this takes off in some way, great, but I've never really had any interest in monetizing it because I think it's very treacherous. You can do very well for a little period, and then something completely out of your control can just totally take this down. So I just personally don't think it's safe. But I would see people growing up, like even back in 2008 or 9 doing Let's Plays, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That'd be something that's just like fun and neat to do, and it scratches that creative itch. So, in high school, I'm expressing those kind of interests and talking about I like going through topics, discussing that kind of stuff. And so I needed to do a project of some type, and we had this very free-form class that I was in. And so the teacher goes well, Brandon, why don't you make, what sounds like what you want to do is why don't you make a podcast for this? And I'm like, great, that sounds like a wonderful idea. So I tried that for the first time, and I enjoyed it there. And, that memory kind of stuck with me. I did feature projects related to podcasting and stuff like this. I ended up taking a class in... Actually, I had one that there was a documentary class in high school that half of it was that and nonfiction podcasts. Of course, what do I go with? But the audio one, because that was what I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And then in college, I did a similar thing. It was more dedicated around podcasting. In fact, I did it during the period that I was making this show. So I've talked about that in one of those earlier episodes around 2021-ish. And I mean, the long story short with it is just I've always had this kind of fascination with the media. I grew up in the perfect time to see where the reality of making stuff on your own, just because, became more realistic. And I had exposure to making podcasts already. So the ability to do this on my own, completely my own way, without having to worry about, I need to think about it like this for a grade, or I need to think about it like this for, fulfilling these particular rules for a contest or whatever, really allowed this to be my creative outlet, hence the original name of the show as well, which, of course I acknowledge it's not nearly as good of a name as what we have now, but it really stood in for what I was doing here. This is just the place where I go to talk about this thing that I care about and make what I think is a good argument in favor of however I feel about it. So that resulted in now 50 episodes and some bonuses. So really a little more than 50, but 50 main line episodes of now what is known as Endless Conversation Loop.
Which I still think, to this day, it somehow ended up being a more perfect name when I got brought on. And, that's not me tooting my own horn because I made the name. But, given our track record, before we started even doing this, this was basically what our conversations would be when we worked together. So, it's just we're both hitting the A button and neither of us are moving. So it just becomes this endless loop of just us talking about video games in the parking lot.
Yeah, that, and see, that's a little bit of how we got together, right? Where we just had this tendency to chat. So it just kind of works out. We may as well use this for something productive, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So my first question to you, I want to know, since, you've ended up here, I want to go back to the start. What is the very first game you remember looking for information for on the internet?
Oh, God, I'm going to have to think about that one.
Doesn't exactly have to be the very first one, but just one that sticks out early in your memory, God, I wish I knew about this, or I wish I had a walkthrough for this thing.
I think if I had to be honest about it, and I don't remember, because I think we had at one point the game guide for this, but I think I remember the first thing being it was to how to unlock certain characters in either Super Smash Bros. Melee or Mario Kart Double Dash. because I think it was 2003 for me, and for Christmas I ended up getting GameCube and like 4 games, which included Melee, and then my parents and my grandparents. I still remember this specifically. But like we went over there the day after Christmas and all that, and they're like, "Oh, Tyler, you forgot your." By the way, sorry, I'm gonna dox my own name here. But like they're just like, "Oh, there's a present that you didn't open on Christmas," and I was really confused because I'm like, I was very thorough as a child who was like, I'm scanning the bottom of that Christmas tree. If it has my name on it, it is going to be opened, and I will not have mercy on it.
I was there. I saw there's nothing left.
I ended up actually getting a copy of Mario Kart Double Dash the day after because I don't know if it was a gift that they had forgotten about and they just didn't give it to me, or if it was like a gift that like they knew I wanted it, but someone ended up going to go pick it up like that morning or something like that. The point is, I still got it like a day after, and like I was so stoked because like those are probably 2 of the games that I put in the most hours, but those were also 2 of the games that required me to really, really figure out what on earth I was supposed to do to unlock half of that stuff. And like even to this day, I still vaguely remember like how to unlock certain characters in like Double Dash. And then with Melee, it was more just like, okay, I'm gonna play like obscene amounts of hours of this anyway. So if I don't do it the other way, I'm just gonna eventually unlock it and I'll be fine. But like those are probably the first instances of like trying to figure out like when I was trying to find like ways to unlock these characters as soon as possible, because it's like, oh, I didn't know this character was in, and like weirdly enough, that was like my first exposure to like the Fire Emblem franchise, because Roy and Marth and Melee, didn't know that was going to be like one of my favorite franchises of all time at the time, because until like the 3DS era, but here we are. But that's probably that I can think of the first instance of like anything I would look up to try to find on the internet for that. Or like the other thing that I can think of offhand is like the Mario Party 5 like battle cart mini game that they did, like just trying to figure out how to unlock parts or something like that. That was like
Super duel mode.
Yeah, that's the one. Quite literally, I think those are the only things that come to mind, cuz like when I was like growing up, like when we had handhelds, I didn't care about that stuff, if I'm being honest. Cuz like I would actively be like playing like the original Mario on Game Boy Color, like the Pokemon versions. I wasn't caring about, oh, how do I get these? It was more just the bewilderment and like because it was so new for me at the time. And it's just like that childlike wonder just kind of overtook everything, where you're not really questioning like how do I optimize this game? You're just like, dude, there's a fire breathing dragon in this game. I'm gonna catch it. Like the bar is very low when it comes to like how to impress a child in some cases. At least back then it was.
Oh, I think that's still the case nowadays. Like anything can be cool if you just pick the right item for that kid. So I think something as simple as like you said, well, that's like a big turtle. Wow, that's neat. That'll get a kid going if that happens to be their thing. And sometimes it takes time for them to find what it is, but like they will find it for sure. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, do you want to have another question for me, or do you have
Oh yeah, we can.
Do you want me to ask you another question?
We can absolutely tennis match this. That's fine. I'll ask one. You ask one. That's fine.
Right.
You could tell that we clearly had this all planned ahead of time.
Way to plan enough.
Here's one that I'm curious about: is how is working on the podcast with me been for you / changed how you used to do the show?
There's a few ways in which it's changed. Some of it's hard to judge because one of the biggest changes in the last year just has to do with the software itself. So, like, the workflow is different in that, you know, I went with SoundForge and Magic's Movie Studio because I wanted to learn new stuff, because if there's anything people know about me, it's that I have this undying need to learn things. And so that's definitely changed how things have gone since you've joined on the show, because those two things have kind of coincided, right? But I think in terms of like the big pieces of production, when I did the show on my own, I would pick out like a handful of topics. I did like, at the very start, I did like 4 topics in an episode plus the intro. And the problem there always came back to, man, is that a lot of work. And you gotta do it all yourself. If I'm discussing, like, let's go back into the archives here and look at some of the earlier episodes just to like get a little taste for like something that I would do. Let me pick out one here from 2021. Like in the fall of 2021, I did a series of episodes that I had like pre-made over the course of the summer, celebrating a bunch of different game series or like system anniversaries for things that I cared about. And so for that, I'd talk about like, what is this if you don't know what this is? What's my experience with it? Where do I think it would go from here? And then I would come up with some special topic. And that is a lot to plan out all by yourself. And it's a lot of talking that you have to do all by yourself. And the shows that I've tried to, I guess I don't know if I want to say imitate, but like some of the ones that I've been inspired by for this typically are ones that have had co-hosts. So like I'm sure I brought it up a handful of times on here, but like the Completely Unnecessary podcast is 2 people. And so they have like a list of topics and they come up with their own notes in terms of what they want to touch on with that particular subject, but it's not necessarily, all that information isn't necessarily shared with each other, and that allows for a more vibrant, off-the-cuff kind of conversation, right? And that's one of the big things that's changed here is by having you as someone to bounce off of, I'm not necessarily as tied down to, I have to like get all these thoughts out, because I could say something and then you'll be inspired off of what I said and it'll go in a completely different direction. Or like you'll say something and then that'll trigger a thought in my head, and now I've figured out something else that I want to go off on related to the subject that we've touched on. So I think that's really helped make the show closer to what I'd sort of always wanted it to be from the beginning. And one of my goals, even going back early on, was always to find somebody that I could co-host this with, because that's the kind of show that I wanted. And so I'm glad that we were able to make this all come together, because I think it's made a different type of show from where it started, but I think it's made a better type of show because it's really forcing us to consider the subjects that we're talking about and change our minds based on what the other person has said on the subject. It's not just me sitting out here talking to a wall and hoping that people just accept what I say, because there's just no pushback or no other perspective. And so that's been probably the biggest change and value in the last year.
Well, I'm going to leapfrog because you actually hit on another question that I was going to save for later, but since we're already there, you mentioned Completely Unnecessary podcast. What were some other biggest inspirations for you with the podcast?
So to this day, I still listen to a variety of shows. And so like there's a couple other ones like from those 2 particular people, like they also host their own, not necessarily individual shows, but like one of them's solo and the other host does with another guy. So like those are Not So Common and Extra Napkins. I love those. I also have enjoyed, like in terms of another like big gaming inspiration, a channel that I watched, I guess it's kind of back in the day now because they're not nearly as popular right now, and they're controversial for a reason in some ways. But like I watched a lot of stuff from Game Explain, and so they do like the discussions and stuff like that, and then the vast majority of the original folks on that crew spun off into their own group in Good Vibes Gaming. It's like their thing, and so they're more videos rather than podcasts. But like they did for a long period too. They did their own podcast, but that seemed I'm not sure if anything like what exactly happened with that, but they kind of stopped it in November of 2024. But like the discussions on that front, hearing them come together was another inspiration for me as well. The next question I have for you. So we just talked about, well, I mean, we didn't just talk about, like, I had you tell me about when you remembered looking up information. What is, like, a major online video about games that you remember seeing on the internet? What's one of your formative memories with that?
I would probably say it had to be like back in college. This was like when PewDiePie was like the biggest thing on YouTube. So like a lot of my exposure to gaming videos started with like the Let's Play communities, especially in that early 2010s era. I remember like my friend Nicole was telling me about PewDiePie, and we ended up watching it, and it was just so funny because it was like, you know, it kind of gave it that couch co-op feel of like, oh, you're watching somebody play a video game, but it's like at the same time they're not just sitting there silently, they're still, you know, interacting with it, they're giving their commentary. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And like even to this day, it's like, do I still wish that I could make those videos? Yes, absolutely. But I don't know, it's not as like of a big thing anymore like it used to be. Like you can still make decent amount of like views from it and whatnot, but like if anything, I would rather do that as more of a kind of like an open diary in a way, where I could actually like make videos and like kind of show like, because I initially was going to make a YouTube channel like a long time ago with some friends, which since then has kind of been placed on the back burner with everything else going on in my life. But the idea was we would all be playing games that we never played for the first time on the channel. Like we wouldn't practice, we would just kind of be there. The other two would be there as like, you know, helping with commentary and all that stuff. And we did start recording episodes, they just never aired. Because like I never played a Souls game in my life, and Dark Souls was going to be the first series on the channel that I did. So like it was so much fun when we recorded it, but like we just got so bogged down and tied up with like our own personal lives that it just kind of became an after effect thing. And now like I'm hoping one day that I can still maybe get that off the air or get it back on and, you know, actually around. But I think it's also fine that like that's not really my thing that I'm focusing on right now. But like I owe so much to like a lot of those creators in like the 2010s. Like for me it was like PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, like the big three. Like Game Grumps is still relevant to me even to this day. Like I'll still watch them from time to time, like depending on what games that they're playing. God, there's just so many Let's Players that like I used to look up to all the time, and it was like it became a lot because it's like you're trying to watch all these different people playing all these different games, and like you just don't have time for anything else. So I just kind of stuck with like I got a handful of them that I really enjoy watching. I'm good.
Yeah. I think Let's Playing was kind of the big inspiration for a lot of folks in that era, where it's like in your case you're in college, in my case if we're talking like 2011 2012, that's when I'm in middle school, right? So you know, that's
wild to think about how we have a podcast now.
Yeah, well, that's the nice thing about getting into the real world, is then you're exposed to like real people, not just the people that are like within this one particular small age bracket that you happen to coincide with, right? So I'm gonna jump off of another question like that. So obviously you talked a little bit about the sort of blind Let's Play you were talking about. Are there any other ways in which those first videos you saw inspired you, if or when you decided to make any online content of your own?
Yes and no. Like, I think for me, I wanted to make content just that was entertaining, and like even to this day, like even if it's not strictly video games, there are content creators that I watch and I'm like, man, I really wish I could do videos. And I do hope at some point that I can, like down the line. But like at the same time, it's like these guys have like a very established format, and I know like there are a lot of people that are out there who are like, oh, I don't know how to start, and it's like, a lot of advice is like, just make something. You can always fix it later. And they're absolutely right. But I think the thing is right now, like, you also have to have the time for it. Like for us, it's like, it's a little bit more manageable. It's like, it's a podcast, and, we take a couple hours every 2 weeks to just get this recorded. And then a lot of it, honestly, for a little inside baseball, a lot of this is done by Brandon, who does a lot of the editing for all these to make sure that this is all up and running. Like, my work to this is very minimal, and I feel bad about it in a way, because I feel like I should be doing more, which hopefully, and this kind of ties into a question I was going to ask, is like, next year I'm actually hoping to get us commission art for a logo for the show, because it'd be nice to have something that's a little bit more of a brand recognition in that aspect.
That's not my strength. Well, and geez, I mean, that kind of skips in some ways to like the 9th question that I have for you on here. Because I was going to ask you, like, what do you want to see out of your second year on the show, now that we're about to cross over into that second year of you being on here?
I think next year, the only thing I really want to see more of is, like, just more of an online presence in a way. Like, not saying that it's like, oh, we got to be this big channel or anything. It's like, but I think, like, what I'm hoping to do is, like, we're not really, like, prevalent with a lot of social media. Like, I don't remember how many actual profiles we have, if at all. So my hope is next year, once we get like the art commission and all that stuff for like a logo and all that, I would hopefully be able to like put out, profiles on some social media sites, and hopefully use that to kind of expand a little bit bigger. I'm not expecting a miracle off of it, but it's like, at least that it's like, okay, we have like, a Facebook, an Instagram, a Blue Sky, a whatever else we might think of, and just kind of use that to our advantage in some capacity, just so that it's like there's a little bit of a better extensive reach that we can use for that. You know what I mean?
Just to get ears and eyeballs, right?
Yeah, like, it's kind of the equivalent of like, it's the bait on the hook in a giant lake. It's like, you'll probably get some bites, but like, it's not necessarily you're gonna get it considering how big of a lake it is. So, even getting like a handful of new listeners like next year, I count that as a win at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't, kind of going back to even my own first answer on here, it's like, I don't ever, like I said, expect us to get to where the point where it's like it becomes huge and it becomes something to where it's a viable as like, oh, I could make money off of this, because that's not even something that I'd necessarily want to do with this show anyway, because like I said, there's just a lot of like pitfalls with it, and it, to me, it's just not worth it at that point. But I do agree, it would be nice to get like to not have it just be like, oh my god, this thing got 15 listens, wow, that one did so great. Well, and I know, like, earlier in the year, you'd also expressed some interest in, like, doing, like, some of the editing stuff, too. So, is that something that, like, you'd want to pursue some of the time as well? Because, like, I think that's something that, for me, that I've struggled with this year is because, I know, woe is me, I'm making this show of my own volition, right? But also, I've definitely found myself at times being like, I record this, I go to work, I come home, I edit. I get up in the morning, I edit the show, and then I go to work, and then I come back, and then I edit. And what have I not done at any point in this process? Play any games to have stuff to talk about on here.
Yeah.
So,
And it's so
like,
hard because it's like when you only have like what is it, 168 hours in a week, it's like you really
mhm.
start to realize how little time you have sometimes for like
Well, right, and
other stuff.
if you work 40 hours and you try to sleep 8 hours in a day,
That's like half of it
that's
right there.
already, yeah, that's half of it. That's 80 hours. So, or no, that's not. No, yeah, that's 80 hours just over like 5 days. So that doesn't even include the extra 16 hours on the weekends for sleep, right? So, obviously, I'm not saying like I just want to shift a bunch of the burden to you as well, but like I think that's something that would maybe be good in the next year is like gradually, if we were to get to a point, like I know we talked about, like obviously we flip flop each time on who does the topic. So maybe then, like when we like, it's like, okay, like it's Boom's topic, he edits. It's Brandon's topic, he edits, and then maybe that'll help each of us. Like in your case, you get a little more like experience and like, oh, this is like the inner workings of the show aside from just the social media, and then I get more like, okay, I have time to gather some stuff for topics that aren't just like, oh, I'm looking on articles on the internet to see what's tripping my trigger right now. I'm actually
Right.
talking about like, oh, here's something that I'm playing and it made me think about this. Because some of a bunch of our earlier topics in the year were more like that, where I talked about like, I played Paper Mario. Here's what I thought about it, right? And then as the year kind of went on, it became a little more timely and topical, which I don't mind. But I think it would also be good to be able to mix in some more of those things that I'm just inspired by, like, oh, I'm playing this and it's making me think about it. Like I actually have one right now with something that I'm playing. So like, well, that'll probably be my first episode of next year once we do our obligatory like wrap up game of the year episode that we kick off 2026 with. But anyway, I guess I just asked you a question. Give me something, I suppose.
Well, you kind of touched a little bit about it, but I can ask this too. What's your biggest aspiration for the show and your life going into next year?
Wow. That's a big question.
Yep, that's what I
My
do.
biggest my biggest aspiration for the show in the next year. I mean, yeah, you're right. I kind of touched on it already. It's like I think it'd be good to have us more equally or like equitably involved in like the creation on that stuff because, you know, I'm sure I would have some input on how I'd want things to be on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
So in that same way, I'm sure you've got input on how you'd want things to be created on like the main show front. And I think that it would make an even more cohesive product if we, are each involved in a little bit of the creation on that, even if one piece of it is maybe more tied to one of us over the other. Honestly, one of my biggest aspirations, though, with it too is like the service that I set this up on, right? Now it's Spotify for podcasters. Back at when it started was called Anchor.fm. I didn't even know it was associated in any way with Spotify when I started. And part of that also was because what show transitioned over to Anchor.fm? The Completely Unnecessary Podcast, one of my inspirations. And the reason I chose that wasn't just because like, oh, it's the one that they're using and it's free and I like them and so I'll go with it. The thing that like got it over the edge was you could send in voicemails. And in fact, I sent a couple of them to the CU podcast. So I think that's one of my big aspirations for next year is like, I set up SpeakPipe so we could get voicemails, and I bring it up at the end of every episode because I'm just like, God, I want a voicemail because I think it'd be so cool. So that is probably my like lower level, but like also like deep down, I really want an aspiration of next year is like, I want to get a voicemail because I think it would be really neat to play that out on the show and respond to it. I know kind of similarly, like you've talked about, like you'd like to gather up audience questions. I think that'd be a perfect way to do something like that. Even if it's just one question per episode, I think it would be fun.
It gives me like that vibe of like how the guys on Mythical Kitchen do their is a hot dog or a hot dog is a sandwich podcast where like they'll have like people who I don't know if they call in or if they leave voicemails. I think they call in for them. But like just more people being actively involved in the show makes I think the show better in that aspect cuz it's like
Yes.
we absolutely can talk our, mouths off with whatever topics that we decide. That has been apparent with our 2-hour episodes. But I think the other thing that kind of comes into it is it's like it gives more incentive to listen to when other people have stuff they would like to bring up and want to talk about. Because, like, we've had the struggle of, like, just even coming up with topics some weeks, and that's understandable. Like, you don't want to always rehash the same stuff unless it's, like, a really big topic, that sort of thing. So, like, kind of saying what you is, I would love to see more audience participation out of it. And I think that kind of ties in with my thing about the social media, hopefully getting more people just even commenting on that stuff and listening that way. And kind of going from that front. And, kind of what you said, it's like being able to bring people like voicemails so that we might listen to these conversations and questions, on the show. Like, give us a reason to listen to them.
Yeah. That to me, that's the big thing. Is like you talked about, like it's like call-in. I thought that was one of the coolest things growing up was knowing there's call-in shows. You can call in and be on the show in a way. I always thought that was really neat. It goes back to like the very first thing we talked about. It's like, okay, it's unrealistic maybe to be on, like to have your own show. Up until now, we got to this point where like you can create your own stuff like we're doing right now. But the thought of like, oh, well, I could just call in and like I could, talk with a person, that'd be neat. Like I just think that's very amusing, and I would love to be able to allow people to do that. So it's definitely like it's a way easier goal to accomplish as long as someone sends a voicemail, but it's something that I want to see regardless because it's just, it would tickle me pink when it happens, I'd be so happy when that thing happens. I'm going to skip around some of my questions here.
Oh, that's all I've been doing. I'm just like, I've got 9 like loosely tied together questions. The conversation just happens to be flowing in it perfectly. I'm like, perfect. Absolutely amazing work by me.
See, and that's part of the problem with my list is like I feel like a lot of my questions flow into each other. But so like the problem with skipping is like, you talked about like, well, maybe we can save these for later. If I skip any of these, I don't know if I'm going to be able to have some of these come up later. But I'll do what I have as listed as number 3 on the list because I think it might be necessary to like intro into some of these other ones. So you talked about that kind of blind Let's Play that never ended up getting off the ground, but I know you do in fact have some pre-ECL content on the internet. What is the first piece that you made that successfully went out there, whether it was seen by 100,000 people or seen by 3? What is the first thing that you made?
So, back in the day, I think this was around when COVID was still pretty prevalent, but we did this show called Atypical Let's Play, as in atypical being not typical. It was kind of a play on words, but it was basically like 4 of us that were getting together to just play these multiplayer games, and like we just kind of went to town on it. And I was the editor and one of the people that was on it, because it was me and my friend Kiwi, as well as 2 of our streamer friends at the time. And we were just playing the most random stuff. Like, we played, like, a full game of Monster Prom. We played, like, Stick Fight the Game. I think we tried to play, like, Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. Like, stuff like that it's, like, fun for people. I remember there were Uno episodes that absolutely got off the wall. And I just remember, like, my favorite editing bit was in one of those Uno episodes where it's, like Kiwi must have had something happen to him where he just like, I forget what all happened. All I just remember was I edited a thing that just said Kiwi yells in fruit salad because he was like basically speaking gibberish, And I don't know why, I just thought it was as funny as it was to me. But, like, it was probably the first active attempt to trying to put something out there on, like, YouTube. And it went for about 6 months, and then I got exhausted because I was the only editor. And I was, like, putting in 12-hour days, editing, like, these episodes in one day. And it would be going out, like, the following day. Like, I made a realization, I'm like, I'm exhausted doing that. And I felt terrible because it was, like, I didn't want to let him down, but it was, like, I couldn't keep doing it. And unfortunately, like, the channel kind of just floundered and ended up, like, now it's just kind of a dead channel, sadly. But I still talk to a couple of them here and there. Like, Kiwi's been one of my friends since college, so it's not like it's anything, you know, like, there was no bad blood or anything about it when it ended. It was just more of, we're adults. It sucks when you can't find the time for it, but, like, that was just kind of the reality at the end of the day. But it was...
Life happens.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun, too, like, when it was going on. Because, like, we played Monster Prom, like, as the competitive way. Like, you just went for whoever you felt like and said, screw whoever anybody else is going for at that point. And it did not even guarantee you success that either of you were going to get a person that you were both going after, which I thought was even funnier. I don't even remember who ended up, like, successfully getting a prom date in that series that we did. But, like, I would love to do something like that again. Like, whether it's, like, us or whoever might be interested in that down the road. Where it's just, you know, these really quick episodes that it's just, what can you put out there with, like, these really fun, not serious games. Like, we're on, like, Monster Prom 4, and I have yet to play or buy it yet, and I really want to at some point. Because, like, I think this one is MonsterCon now, so I'm just like, oh, I have to see how absurd this is now.
Yeah, I think in that same kind of way, you know, maybe Let's Play isn't necessarily the thing as much to do anymore, but, like, I think it'd be cool, even if it's just, like, once a month, to do, like, oh, what if you did, like, a live stream of that kind of thing, just to do it for funsies, just for the sake of doing it, you know? So I think that's definitely something that would be, like, doable eventually. I just don't know when that would be yet. Just to do something different once in a while, you know?
And I mean, next year I do want to hopefully get back into streaming again. And I could probably at least start doing that stuff again before really worrying about, you know, making videos or anything like that. Because, like, that's not really the top of my priority list. It's like, I've been, like, watching a lot of streamers lately, like, kind of near the end of the year. And I met some really cool people that I love playing games with, like Deep Rock Galactic or, what else? The other one that we played recently. Guilty as Sock. That was it. The sock puppet courtroom game.
I saw that. I saw the announcement for that. I was like, oh man, I really want to play that.
It's literally like sock puppet theater for Phoenix, right?
I know. That's why I like to see it so much.
But, like, it's just fun to have, like, a group of people to play games with. And I think, like, for me, like, that blind playthrough channel, that still could happen. I don't know for sure yet. But it would be awesome if it could, because I like the idea of just being able to have, like, a literal diary of you on YouTube servers of just, like, these are my first ever playthroughs of, like, these games that I probably should have played a long time ago. Like, I'm still finishing Link to the Past because I haven't touched it in a few months for the first time. And I'm like, man, I need to finish that soon.
It's a classic. I say as I haven't finished it. The only one I've ever finished is Ocarina of Time.
That's another one I got to finish yet, because I finished a few Zeldas, but I haven't finished, like, the important ones, as I would say. Because, like, I beat Breath of the Wild, I beat Twilight Princess, I beat Phantom Hourglass, and then I have, like, Link to the Past, Ocarina of Time, like, a bunch of the really well-known ones that I still need to do.
I've only ever finished Ocarina of Time, and I came very, very close to finishing A Link Between Worlds. Well, good news, you answered, like, a couple of my questions inside of that one.
We're getting through all 18 today. Let's go.
I was going to ask, too, about, like, how long did that project last? You talked about, like, and what was the next big thing you made? And it sounds like that was the big thing kind of before landing on here, is the way I'm understanding it. All right, we are at about the 53-minute mark in the recording. I have, believe it or not, because we've done very well at like combining answers together, I have 2 questions left.
Wow, I've still got like 5 yet. I say screw it. We're already making great time.
Let's have you ask me a question and let's see how if we can finish these all out.
All right, I have, I think, 2 more that pertain to the show for you. First one is, what's your favorite episode that we've done so far?
Wow, another one that's going to dovetail the question I had for you. My favorite episode or like favorite moment from this year so far. I have to expand out my Chrome tab because I need to see the names of the episodes. I thought episode 45 came out very well when we talked about like our white whales. I thought that one was like a really nice, fun topic. Honestly, that was something that I really enjoyed about a lot of the episodes that we do is that, you know, we'd go into them and it'd be like, you know, we'll see if this ends up being a great conversation or we'll see if it ends up being like, you know, it just kind of goes fine. And like, we'd have a lot of ones where it's like, this just kind of turned out very nicely. So like White Whale was really good. I thought, let's see, which one is like the name of this one? Our episode where we talked about like, games that we don't like as much as others. Like, I thought that one was pretty good. Oh, the Backlog episode, that one was pretty good as well.
The White Whale and Backlog are probably 2 of my top 3. I think for me, the other one I really like is the crossovers episode that we talked about. Like, that was such a fun topic to kind of dig through. Like, the research I put into that episode was insane because, like, I started going down rabbit holes where I'm just like, there's no way that this exists. And lo and behold, there is a Monster Hunter Metal Gear crossover that I didn't know about until I started searching it. And boy, was it a fun discovery for me.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I mean, clearly, like some of our audience favorite ones. I don't know what it is about episode 32. That was the one where I talked about Paper Mario and you talked about like why people go back to trading card games. That one on the audio just like went super popular. That one has 22 streams and downloads. And then similarly, episode 44, the big one, Stop Killing Games, which I have to give credit to another person that I worked with because he was the one that was like, Brandon, you should really do an episode on this. And I'm glad we did it because, I mean, for one thing, obviously it was really popular, but it's a really big issue. I think we did, they're not as fun, but like the Stop Killing Games and the key card stuff, like those are important topics, right? Like they're just nice to get out there because you really get people thinking about these issues. My question for you, and you've touched on this a little bit already, this is going to be my 8th question on here. What are you most proud of from this show in your first year on here?
This is going to sound like a weird answer, but the consistency. Like, I don't feel like our show in any capacity has, like, dipped in quality. I don't think it's done anything, like, to really be like, oh, we're falling off. And I mean, we're a small podcast. No one gives a shit about that. Sorry for the censors, but whatever. But, like, just the consistency of being able to, like, I don't ever feel bored doing the show when we talk, which is a huge thing that I've always had a problem with, like, with most jobs. So, like, having something like this where it's, like, I'm basically talking to my friend about whatever gaming topics we could think of and letting other people also in on the conversation. That honestly just feels so natural for me. And then the consistency of just being able to do it as frequently as he did. Like, I know we had said, like, oh, we're going to try to do, like, 25 episodes this year. And we fell a little short. We did. But at the same time, we still got pretty close with it. Like, that kind of consistency is really hard for a lot of, like, smaller shows, I would assume. But, like, we surprisingly kept pretty close to it, and I'm pretty happy with that.
And that's with all the stuff that happened this year too, that like kind of got in the way. Like we definitely had a lull period in between August and like October.
Yeah.
But, you know, we were still able to end up by the end of like this will be episode 21 for 2025. So the fact that we got over 20 is still like when we record every 2 weeks, that's I think something to be proud of.
Right, and I honestly think that it's like a testament showing that like we both do care about what happens with this show, like kind of what we had touched about earlier, like what's the aspirations going into next year. It's like, you know, trying to kind of build it up a little bit more, try to get more ears to listen, and then who knows, maybe eventually it does hit that point of we're doing a video podcast now. There's a lot of, you know, what ifs going into it, but it's like we're kind of just taking it at our own pace, and like that's been working for us, honestly, I think.
Yeah, I don't think either of us expect this to become like the next global sensation, but just like the fact that we can do this and just have fun and there's somebody out there in the world, whether it's the 15 people that streamed or downloaded episode 48 or the, you know, on like the YouTube side, there's only one view on episode 44, even though that just went crazy on audio for whatever reason. The fact that anybody, you know, came and consumed it to me that's all that really matters with it, because that means somebody got value out of what we had to say. Somebody thought it was worthwhile to hear our voices, and it changed how they thought about something, or they were just entertained by it, and that matters. So just being able to do more of that would be cool.
And follow-up question. I think this is the last one I have for the show-specific stuff. If we ever have a first guest on our show, who would you want it to be?
Oh, man. That is a great question. I don't really know, because I don't foresee us being big enough at any point in the near future to where you could get somebody who has like clout or sway, so to speak, to be interested in coming on the show. But I don't know who like that we know personally that would make a phenomenal guest. I know we've talked about there's this person we both know who does some esports type stuff, and like the main reason I want him on the show is because I think he'd be an interesting counter voice, you know, obviously doing esports or like being involved in some way, but it's a topic that I'd want to talk about, because like I have worries about esports as an area, like in terms of, you know, how viable can they really be, because it's not fully adjacent to how like real world sports are. Sports don't just go away. Esports can be fleeting, and I think that would make for an interesting discussion from someone who is like involved in that world. So I guess I can't give a specific answer right now, but I, for guests, would want someone who enhances the topic, kind of like that, where it's like, I want someone who has the expertise on that or has the involvement in that area, such that it gives us perspective on the subject matter in a way that we don't necessarily have. And who knows? I mean, that could be people involved in different areas of the industry. That could be like developers themselves, someone making their own independent game. I just think that would be the direction I would want to go in.
I have one in mind that I think that would be good for like a very specific topic. I have a professor who I used to take classes from back at my old college, who also does like a gaming centric podcast, but they are able to like have more frequent guests. Like they've done live episodes at like this like PopCon thing that they have at like one of the local libraries here in town for us. and it'd be fun for like an episode of like just kind of talking about gaming and media, like not as like gaming industry itself, but like I think it's this the representation of it all. I feel like he's got some very good insight on like that sort of thing, and I'd love to get his like opinion on that stuff if he hasn't done the topic already. But I mean, if you do want to go scope him out, I will shout him out. It's the Seriously Fun podcast. Definitely take a look. They do some really good work over there. But I'd love to get him on the show if that ever comes down to a point where we're actively looking for guests for certain topics or something. That's probably the only one I can think of right now, aside from the one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I could see that being fun. I could see, similarly in college, I took a few classes with that are related to like game stuff, and one of the ones I remember taking with this professor was video games and learning. I think that could be an interesting sort of episode to look at, is like, well, how do games play a role in the way that we like educate ourselves in the real world? So like I could see that being a neat episode if I was able to get her to agree to be on it on an episode. But I'm not saying that'll be any time in the immediate future. So, but I think it's fun to think about. You know, it could make for a fun opportunity.
I definitely think that'd be interesting to see. Like, we can talk ourselves, but by no means we're experts. So every once in a while, getting like someone who actually knows what the hell they're talking about is kind of a fun idea.
Yeah, not just us with our bloviating opinions.
Yeah, you know, because our egos need that.
All right. So you have 3 more questions for me, and I have 1 more for you.
Yeah, I've got all these kind of more pertaining to you. So, first one we'll start with. What's the first game that got you into gaming? As well as what's your best games of all time that you can think of?
Well, I think I've told this story a handful of times on the show, but of course, like, the first 2 formative gaming memories always come back to that Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Super Mario World and Donkey Kong Country. Those are the 2 that got me into this in the very first place. I mean, I could just kind of cop out there and be like, yeah, I've talked about that already. You know, that's kind of where it all started. But, you know, after that, when I was like 6 or 7-ish, maybe 5 or 6, somewhere around there. This was back when we were living out in Pennsylvania. You know, my parents and my aunt and uncle thought it was the coolest thing, all of them having grown up in some way in the 1980s, that there was a video game about rock and roll. 2 of them, in fact. I am, of course, talking about Guitar Hero and Rock Band. They were part of that craze. And the way that they got into it was through the PlayStation 2. So that was like my next sort of foray into like seeing any other types of games. Well, aside from computer games, I suppose, too, because like those are some of my earliest gaming memories as well, as with playing, you know, different little games on the PC. And a lot of them, like as a kid, were like little educational games. Of course, your Junior Adventures, your Humongous games. I have these handful of Scooby-Doo games that I loved growing up, and I'll even still pop them in to this computer to this day just for funsies, and I'll enjoy them. Where everything finally comes together is with the DS. Oh, the DS. Got that in 2007. First 3 games on it. Big Brain Academy. Shocker, I'm 7 years old. Parents want you to have an educational game. True Swing Golf, because I was interested in getting more interested in golf at the time. and a game I know that you are interested in, Yoshi's Island DS.
I actually did find that finally. So I have all my missing
Woo!
games are finally. I forgot to bring that up the other day, but I finally have all my games back in one cohesive piece. I've never been happier.
Hooray! Yoshi's Island DS. You finally got that piece of the puzzle.
It only took how many years?
So, yeah, for me, it's kind of a story of just going and like getting a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Like, you know, I played a handful of games with my dad on the Super Nintendo. I saw them playing Guitar Hero, and then of course we got some more. I hesitate to call them like serious games for the PlayStation 2, but just like more, you know, traditional ones that I would want to play. And then, you know, kind of in that similar way on the DS, it's like, oh, grow up, play some licensed games. Like, I'm sure I've told this story where it's like, I remember getting Mario Kart DS, and that was a huge memory because it's like, wow, this is a rare gift from my uncle on my dad's side. Not because he didn't want to like give us stuff, but just like it was kind of hard to access us. And this is before Amazon was like, and like shipping was like the big thing, like the big way to get stuff to people. So then that's kind of like where the fascination with the Mario series itself starts. And oh man, favorite games of all time though?
We can limit it to like 3, because I'm sure this could be like its own topic. But like, what do we need to know to get to know Brandon more? Like, what is like your top 3 if you had to pick right now?
I think the fact that Super Mario World is so formative puts it in that absolute top tier pedestal of games. It's the one that I would pick over any other compared to any Mario game, and there's a lot of them out there.
Mm-hmm. We have discussed that.
yeah, we sure did. The other 2 is where it gets very tough because there's like a ton of games I could justify giving it to. Like, I adore games that kind of come out of nowhere and surprise you very well. Like, that's where my fascination with stuff like Pikmin came from. Well, what the heck is this? You have all these colorful guys and you strategize and figure out what to do in a day. Like, yeah, can that be that exciting? And then you try it out, and it's like, whoa, that's really cool. That's where Ace Attorney comes from for me. Like, oh, can a game about lawyers really be that interesting? Yeah, I know. We figured out a way to get it into this episode, too. But it came up naturally in this case. Like, oh, can it be that interesting? I play it. Wow, there's a really cool story here, right? I want to see more of this. So, and it kind of ties into, like, you know, I talked about on the computer side playing some of those Scooby-Doo games as a kid. I've always loved mystery stuff, so that could go in there as well. So, God, yeah, like picking the 2 other ones is like nigh on impossible because I could really make a case for anything. Like, I think some kind of adventure game would have to go in there, and you could make the case for that being Trials and Tribulations. You could make the case for that being Hotel Dusk. You can make the case for that being one of those childhood games that I had because it just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. As for the third one, I mean, that's where it gets, I mean, pretty much impossible because
I can just picture Brandon on the other side right now. It's just like your heads in your hands, like just sweating profusely. What's the third?
Like, I mean, it literally is like picking your favorite child in some ways, you know? You can't, there isn't one that you love that much more than the other. You know, man, yeah, maybe something arcadey. Like, I feel like that's the one area that we haven't really touched on here. Like, Maybe some kind of Namco Pac-Man type deal here. That would maybe be the other one that's sticking out to me, because that's also another one of my formative memories, is like hearing about how cool arcades were, and parents talking about like, oh yeah, and Donkey Kong and Pac-Man and Galaga, those are all like the thing, and finding those for myself was really cool. So yeah, I guess maybe like a Ms. Pac-Man would go in there as the last one, which I know isn't a very like exciting answer, but like I would want it, the tip top three, to be like, the number one is like, this is my game, period. Something that like really impressed me, and then something that I think is very formative. So I guess that's what I got for now, but you could ask me next week and I could probably fit anything else into that third slot and have a good justification for it.
That's fair, I think. I'd say mine are pretty easy because they have really not changed over the last how many years, but if I really sat down and thought about it, my top 10 has definitely changed a lot. But like the top 3 easily is still Twilight Princess is number 1, Persona 5 Royal, and Hades. Like those just are all so good to me that I'm like, I never get tired of playing those games, where it's like, even now, like I'm playing through Hades for like the 3rd time, and I'm still enveloped. It's like, I'll put it down, but it's like, I'm never bored with the game. It's like, I'll eventually go back to it, know exactly where I'm at, and I'm like, I'm just so happy to be playing it. But like, there's so many games that I've played that I'm like, that's on my top 10, that's like constantly like, outside of those 3, they're like constantly shifting around. It's like, I've got like Hi-Fi Rush in there, I've got Horizon Zero Dawn, I've got like God of War 2018, I've got just so many of these games that I'm like, even like some of the stuff that I played this year, like, hang on, I gotta pull up my list. Let's see. Yeah, like Three Houses I beat, Dave the Diver was amazing, Unicorn Overlord was amazing, Dispatch is probably my favorite game from the year that is already making a push into my top 10. I think it's in my top 5 if I'm being completely honest. Like, The Wolf Among Us, like, there's so many good games that I'm just sitting here and I'm like, I can't just have 10. This sucks.
Man, yeah. It's tough. It really is a challenge to pick out the ones that should be on that list.
All right. I only have 2 questions, but I think I'm going to actually save the one question as more of an actual topic for us for a later episode.
All right.
Because the more I read it, the more I'm just like, this would be interesting to go in depth on. So, do you have one more? You said you had one more, right?
Yes. So, my final question for you, putting everything together that I asked you about, like your experience looking for game stuff on the internet, making stuff on the internet, how did that all bring you to saying, yeah, I'll do a podcast?
I think it just felt natural. Like, I don't even think it was necessarily everything that kind of came before that. It was more like when we first started talking and kind of getting really invested in like the conversations we were having. And then like you had mentioned that you had a podcast, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then like you were telling me like, yeah, I just do it by myself. And I'm like, oh, we need to change that. You need somebody to talk to. Like in the back of my head, it's just like, yo, he needs to have somebody to talk to. He's so fascinating of a human. Like when it comes to this stuff, like we need to give him someone that will respond. And like it just seemed so natural of a choice where it was like, oh yeah, let's do this. Like it's not even in question.
The pieces all just fell into place.
Quite literally. And like the ironic thing is like if I didn't apply for the one job like 2 years ago, we would not be here today, which I still think is hilarious looking back.
The odds of us crossing paths would not be 0, but it would be certainly much less likely had we just not happened to work at the same place at the same time.
Right, exactly. And honestly, I think it's for the best with that. Like, I don't know how long we will be doing it, but like, for as long as we both are like, yeah, let's do this, like, I'm already down. Like, I'm absolutely on board with this.
It's just a nice reprieve from all the other stuff to do this. Like that's the thing. I talked about earlier how it's like, oh my god, like I want to do less of the editing. This is the part I like the most. This part, the actual conversation.
The conversation.
This is the part that makes me happy.
Loop.
Yes, exactly. The middle piece of the puzzle, like making the notes. I like making the notes because I think you can't have a good conversation if you don't have anything that you're necessarily working off of. But actually putting that together, this is the fun part. It's the production itself that's the part I like. So I agree. Like having some sort of way that I do this. Like I'm sure, in 4 to 5 years, let's say, for sake of argument, let's say I have a girlfriend or I'm married or whatever. Am I going to have the time to do this every 2 weeks necessarily? Well, maybe not. Maybe the amount of episodes goes down, but like it's still worthwhile to try to make something because it's just a nice reprieve from all the other stuff. Because there's plenty of stuff going on in the world that it's nice to just get away from for a little bit. And I think something like this provides that for each of us. So that's all my questions for you. So I suppose you only have one more for me, and then we can call it a day.
So the last question that I'm going to ask you is, what do you hope to do in the future outside of the show? You kind of touched a little bit about it, but like, what is Brandon's aspirations outside of ECL? Toaster, you're licking my foot.
In general, or just for 2026?
I say in general. Like, this is not, like, specifically, like, next year. Because we kind of touched a little bit more on next year. But, like, what are you hoping to do moving forward, like, in general? Like, do you have career aspirations? Do you have social aspirations? Like, what is it that you are hoping for? Like, we're talking about the man behind the mic.
Yeah, I think the big things I'm focused on right now, there is a little, like, it's not really a career change that I'm making, but like I've applied for a sort of like a promotion in what I do right now, so that would be nice to get. I don't know that I'm absolutely tied to the place that I live in right at this very moment. I think one of my aspirations would be to be closer in some way to the people in my family. But part of the problem with that is all the different like little subgroups in that are kind of disparate. So like, I could be closer to some of the folks in my mom's side of the family, which would require me to stay in Wisconsin, but that still leaves part of the family I've in Minnesota is far away. Obviously, I have my aunt and uncle are out in Pennsylvania. They're still 13 hours away on the road. So there's kind of a sacrifice that I would have no matter which group that I go with. But right now I'm a little bit disparate. Like, I'm not super disparate from the family that's within the state, but it would be nice to be a little bit closer to some of them in here. So I would see in the future I'm probably not necessarily staying here, but who knows? Like, with one of my other aspirations, yeah, I would like to stop being single, and there's definitely some work that I've been doing on that in the last like half a year or so, but there's still more that I need to do on that front, and whoever I would end up with, maybe she's like, no, I really would want to stay around here, and it's like, well, if it's because like her family's around here, who am I to like rip her away from that, right? That isn't necessarily the right thing to do, obviously. So maybe that doesn't necessarily come to pass. I'd like to do more like traveling for myself. I'm not a huge obviously you're talking on here about like establishing the social medias because I haven't done it because I don't really care about that kind of stuff. Personally, that's not my thing. Like, I wouldn't want to go somewhere in my own personal life just to take pictures of having been there. I would rather go to places to see people, but I also think there's some enriching experiences I could have by going somewhere just to go there, you know? Like, oh, the furthest west I've been is Colorado. Well, it sure would, like, it'd be neat to go to the Pacific Ocean. Why? Well, because I haven't done it yet. That would enrich my life.
I can vouch. The Pacific Ocean is a great time because I've been there, like, I've been out west, like in Oregon and California at 2 different points in my life, and we've gotten to see the Pacific both times. It is a very, very amazing experience just in general to travel. Like, I get where you're coming from, like, but I'm going to interject my 2 cents is like, my then girlfriend and I, we went to Denver earlier this year, and like, it was such a fun trip for me. Like, I loved going to Denver, even if it was only for a handful of days, but like, I legitimately would go back there again, like, just for like the atmosphere. Like, I loved living in Colorado for like 4 days. I don't know if it's somewhere I'd live long term, but like, it was such a enriching experience just to go places. But I think part of it is also like, I had a reason to go. Like, I have a thing on my bucket list where I want to hit every Major League Baseball park for every team at least once in my life. And I got to go to Coors Field for a Rockies game where they did actually win, despite the fact that was only their 9th win of the season, and it was 2 months into the season. That's not good.
Oh yeah, that is
But it was such a
struggling.
But it was such a fun experience because like that game went down to the wire, and it was so amazing to watch in person. It was like I was screaming, my voice was hoarse, and I was like, I would do it all over again if I could. And like, there's other stuff too. Like when you just kind of go around and explore, like you find the most unexpected things. Like there's a set of video game stores actually out there called Level 7 Games. And, like, I got to visit a couple of the, like, they had 2 of the then 3 stores, and I think they're supposed to have a 4th at some point, from what I heard. Sometime, I think, next year. But, like, the stores are so cool. Like, there's so much stuff that I did not expect to find. And I bought so many games there because, like, I wasn't expecting to find them ever in my life. Like, or just find these really oddball picks that are now just part of my collection. And I'm like, these are so sick. I'm so happy I have these now. And I kind of want to keep doing that. Like, I want to do one more trip, I think, next year, too. That's kind of in that same vein. But, like, I'm looking at going to Atlanta for Magic Convention that is happening, like, in September, I think. And hopefully I'll get to go with some friends. But, like, I'm severely debating if I can't find anybody. I might just go by myself. Because, like, A, I get to go to Atlanta, finally, and just be able to go visit that. And 2, it's for a convention for a hobby that I genuinely enjoy, with a good chance that I will meet people that have a similar appreciation for the hobby. Maybe even meeting some of my, like, current, like, what's the word I'm looking for? People I look up to, like, for lack of a better word.
Inspirations?
Yeah. Like, I love watching, like, the guys at Commander at Home with, like, Brian and Olivia. They're amazing. Like, I watch the Command Zone. I watch, like, some of these smaller Magic content creators, like Ben Brodman, like, what's the other one that I've been watching a lot of recently? Oh, Misty Step. She's been, like, in the Midwest area. Like, I've seen her, like, I remember there was a, story I was producing, and I just was like, we got it from a station in Madison, and the person they interviewed happened to be Misty Step. Like, ain't no way that my worlds are colliding at work.
What are the odds?
Like, I'd love to just meet a lot of people. Like, even something, like, for next year that I want to do is, once I get a better computer, I do kind of want to try my hand at making, like, content that I feel like I could do. Like, I have a couple of ideas that I'm running with right now, which includes, like, I'm calling it Boomer Relearns, where I'm, like, basically relearning a bunch of the old games that I used to play competitively, or like the ones that I put like a lot of hours in that I haven't touched in years. Like trying to go back into League of Legends ranked, or playing Warframe for the first time in like I don't know how long. I really just want to see if like it's still as fun as I remember it and I sunk all those hours in for a good reason, or if I found out, hey, maybe this isn't for me, Chief.
Has it changed?
And they definitely have changed, and I'm still mad at Warframe because I still haven't gotten my Corinth Pride. Because that's the gun I wanted the most before I stopped playing. I'm like, I still haven't gotten that. But I also was thinking about making like Magic content at some point, and I was thinking about using like my journalism background to like interview smaller Magic content creators and kind of, getting their 2 cents on like, what's happening in the space, what do they like about the game, what do they wish that was changed, like that sort of stuff. And Magic, like, especially recently, has had plenty to talk about too. So like just getting a chance to like even get some people out there to be like, hey, this is a small content creator you should go support because they do good work. And like there's some big names too, like I'm sure that they absolutely would, be fun to interview, but it's like I want to focus on the small creators first, and then I'll eventually work my way up to bigger names, once they are like, oh yeah, I think I've seen your video once or twice. I'm like, oh, he knows me. But I think that's one of my biggest aspirations going into next year. Along with I am making a decision to make an attempt to try to get my first voice acting role next year as well, because that is something that I'm very passionate about, and I want to do more of that, but I don't know like the ins and outs of what to do for auditions for that, as well as I would like probably need to have like a decent setup for that, like just so I at least have something that makes everything sound decent enough that when I send it in, it's like it doesn't sound like, hey, why does this sound like you're recording in a basement? It's because I'm recording in a basement. Like I don't know what you're expecting. I do not have the money to just make a little like self-enclosed booth, as it were, to just be like, oh yeah, I can just voice record anything at my own home. It's like, no man, just give me a thick comforter and I'll just talk above the microphone with it.
Yeah, that's also a long-term aspiration. Is I would like to do proper audio treatment in a space for something like this, but that would likely require me to own a place as opposed to rent an apartment. So that's going to take a little bit of other life stuff to happen first before I can do that. So
yeah, I definitely feel that.
Well, I think that is a nice place for us to end on. So yeah, we got through all our questions today. Woohoo!
I'm actually
us.
I'm honestly impressed by that for some reason, because I was like, I didn't know if we were going to for sure, and then it was like, you know what, this is just too much fun. Screw it, let's run it.
Well, we had like lengthy but also concise answers at the same time, so I think we did a pretty good job of keeping on time here. So we did a good job. And I hope you all out there that were listening to this also thought we did a great job. And if you did think that, you could like the episode perhaps on whatever platform you are listening to us on. You could also share your approval or disapproval, if you have it, through a comment, perhaps at a voicemail at speakpipe.com/endless conversation loop. We'd love it if you did that.
Seriously, please use SpeakPipe.
Yeah, that's my goal. Remember, you could get the goal done before 2026 begins. Even that'd be awesome if someone did that. I would deeply appreciate it. And otherwise, you could subscribe on any of the platforms that we're on as well, if you want to make sure that you can hear this episode and any future ones as soon as it is released to the public. One more housekeeping item before we decide to sign off, though. I think we're going to be taking a little bit of a holiday break. It just seems like, all the holidays are right around the corner here. It is December, not 3rd, I believe it's the 4th. I need to fix my watch date on here to show the 4th instead of the 3rd. So, I just want to work on this and give me a little time before we head into 2026 for episode 51. I figure that one's going to be our obligatory wrap-up, kind of like we started this year off with, where we talked about our release of the year, personal game of the year, and backlog MVP. But other than that, we'll go right into some new topics right after that, I figure. Any last words, or are you ready for us to sign out here, sir?
All I have is, for those of you who have listened since I have come on the show, I just want to say thank you for sticking out with us for the year. It's definitely been an adventure. Hopefully next year we'll have even more interesting topics, and you guys will still be just as impressed, all two of you. And hopefully next year, we'll bring you some more fun, more interesting stuff. Like I said, I'm kind of spinning my wheels here. Brandon, take us home.
All right. Yep. Thank you for listening for us. Thank you for joining us for all of these 21 episodes that we've released this year. Thank you if you've been here since my very start in January 2020, 50 episodes. If you decided to listen to those, I'm sure they're not as great as what we have right now. Regardless, I do deeply appreciate it. And with that, I think it's time to sign out. So I am Brandon.
And I am Boom.
And we will see you in 2026. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Bye-bye.